Welcome back to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shannon, and once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Marco Corona.
What up?
What's going on?
Nothing much, man. Nothing happened in the NBA, just a trade, and that's it.
A bunch of trades, man. It was a busy
Yeah.
day today in the NBA for a lot of teams. What was it? I think it was 10, 15 trades today? And then
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And then you include the ones that happened on the 9th and then the 8th, and right. So it's been a flurry of the last couple of days.
A flurry. That's an understatement, man. But holy crap. It's like it went from this might happen to everything happened at once. Right? So wild time. The NBA just really knows how to get in there, right? It's just when you think it's nothing's gonna happen, it's bam. I wonder if Gary Bettman's like all jealous and shit of how this works. But anyway.
Oh, for sure it is. For sure he is. There's no question that he's not, jealous of what the NBA, because you turn on Trade Center up here in Canada, right? Like for the NHL, and it's like it's a day-long thing, and nobody gets traded. Like it's nobody.
Yeah, there's like 18 guys in a panel talking about the third liner getting traded, and it doesn't even happen. But we're not talking NHL.
No, we're not.
NBA. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. And the big thing, we've been talking about this guy. We've been talking about will he or won't he be traded for what? Jeez. Probably 7-8 months. It's been right. It's been so ridiculous, the drama in terms of that. But there was a massive trade in the NBA, right? With the Brooklyn Nets bringing in Ben Simmons, the guy that everybody's been talking about. The Nets, the Philadelphia 76ers traded away Doc Rivers' son-in-law there, right?
Why you gotta highlight that?
Because there was a joke going around that they canceled practice because he had to go and hug his grandchildren goodbye.
Wow. Can you just stop? But practice was canceled, though. It
was canceled, right? But at the end of the day, the Nets are receiving Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, a first-round pick in 2022, and a protected first-round pick in 2027. Going the other way is James Harden and Paul Millsap.
Cool.
But the biggest thing to me, before we get into the trade, is that last season, before the season started, James Harden forced his way out of Houston and wanted to go to Brooklyn to play with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, he had the fat suit and everything, right?
Right. And then he went to Brooklyn.
I said it, yeah.
And then he went to Brooklyn and he wanted to be moved again.
Right.
It's like, you got to pick what you want to do here. It's either you want to play with one team or you don't. Like, that's like, it's getting it right.
I'm surprised. I'm sorry. I'm not surprised that a trade happened of this magnitude, because this is what happens in the NBA. But what I am surprised is of how quick this was, not only for the actual tenure that these three guys have played, or for lack of a better term, haven't played together. And it just went sour so quickly. Now, again, that part is not surprising, but what I'm surprised about is, and you alluded to this, it's like, okay, I want out of Houston. I want into Brooklyn. We're all homies, right? We're tight. We're going to do this thing. We get to to Milwaukee, a toenail away from beating Milwaukee again. James Harden was hurt and Kyrie was in Cancun somewhere. And then all of a sudden you figure, okay, this year things are going to get better. They're going to be all healthy, and it hasn't happened. And then all of a sudden, because at the beginning of the season, you didn't hear whispers about it. And then every other week, something else was up. And the longer Kyrie was absent, it sounded like the more James Harden was frustrated. And then, of course, KD got hurt and he's out, a few more weeks still. He's going to miss the All Star game and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden, this thing started picking up steam. And both of us, and I think that we could agree, was, we heard the reports and Philadelphia was pushing this and they wanted this. Then they shut it down. And we figured a trade of this magnitude, there's no way it happens mid-season, at least not this year. And then all of a sudden, as of last night, when Brian Windhorst dropped the win bomb, when he went all deal zone on everybody. But again, it was hearsay. And then all of a sudden, it just happened. Who do you think won this trade, though? Right off the bat.
The Brooklyn
I
Nets.
think it's close.
I think it's
You think so?
I think it's a toss up, but I think Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn wins. And I mean, you're adding Ben Simmons for all his negativity and his non shooting prowess. He's a solid defender, and that's one thing they've lacked. Right? You have Kyrie, you have Kevin, you have James Harden. James Harden played zero defense. Ben Simmons is going to come in there and he's going to play. He's going to play defense when he gets back. Right? Paul's already said basically that they have to. There's some work to do to get him back into game shape and get him ready to play and all that stuff. Right? But
blah blah blah.
Right? But that was his own fault. That was his own doing at the end of the day. But you're not just adding Ben Simmons. You're adding a lethal shooter, a guy that can shoot the ball very well in Seth Curry, right? He spreads the floor, makes it difficult, and will take some pressure off of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving when they're playing, obviously. And then you're adding a depth center, a very good depth center in Andre Drummond,
another old guy,
right? And another old guy, but I mean, he still can
older.
play, right?
He's not that old,
right?
Right.
No, but he could still play. He's still got a lot of talent, right?
He probably slides into that number 1-5 spot.
Oh, for sure. There's no question. Like
right?
he's definitely in there. But you look at the Sixers on the other hand, and the Sixers getting James Harden. They're getting rid of a cancer in the room and Ben Simmons, right? You're adding James Harden to the thing, but he doesn't play defense. But now you're taking a little bit of the scoring load off of Joel Embiid, who's having an outstanding season, another all-worldly year, right? But you're adding him to that roster. You've already got Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey's looking well in Matisse Thybulle. They're a better team than many are giving credit for, and I think it's a 50-50 split for the most part. If I had to swing the pendulum, I'd swing it a little bit that way towards the Brooklyn Nets.
I'm going to go the opposite, and I'm going to go 51-49 percentage-wise for the Philadelphia 76ers, and I'm talking about the now.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what Ben Simmons is going to be. Yeah. Philadelphia, finally, to your point, and you said this, and this is a very good point, he actually gets, and he by meaning Joel Embiid, who has actually been healthy for the most part. He is having an MVP caliber season. Yeah. You have to give him credit. Now he gets a buddy. Now, how is that going to work as far as two guys who dominate the ball? I don't know, but I think that's Doc Rivers' problem, and they'll figure it out. But it's a better situation in Philadelphia because you have two guys that are completely not only different, but I think that Embiid is actually going to benefit from this. As far as the Brooklyn Nets, I'm not too sure where this lands yet. And this is why I'm 51-49, so it's slight edge. Only because, number one, we don't, like I said, Ben Simmons, I don't know what you're going to get from him. He's been away from the game for a while. And then there's the wild card in all this. It's Kyrie Irving's availability.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When is Kyrie Irving going to play at home? Because let's face it, eventually, when this team gets into the playoffs, and we fully expect, even though they're in the middle of a 9-game losing streak as we record this is a team that should be contending for an Eastern Conference title, or at least an NBA title, Eastern Conference final, pardon me. But if Kyrie Irving is not playing at home, right, we're already now in February, then are you really going to rely on Ben Simmons to pick up the slack? Based on what we know in his history, because now basically we are back to square one saying, listen, Katie, you need to carry us, because Andre Drummond's not going to lift your team, right? No. The other, Blake Griffin, really, I'm not even going to have this conversation about him. And the other parts that are in that team, yes, I understand they got Seth Curry, who that gives you a little bit of depth because they're missing what's his name, Joel Harris, right? I believe he's still hurt,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that sort of gives them a little bit of flexibility in the shooting area, and I'm sure that Seth will actually probably slide into that starting lineup. So long term, yes, maybe Brooklyn will benefit this from this trade, but right now I have to give the slight edge to Philadelphia because they improved their team now. Remember, they are adding James Harden to a team that didn't have uh, Ben Simmons playing anyway,
Yeah.
right? So it's really actually an addition and not a really subtraction because hey, they never really had Ben Simmons anyways. But let's see what happens. Maybe this gives Brooklyn a little bit of a boost because they've been complete trash over the last 2 3 weeks and have no idea what the hell is going on. And obviously, KD's missed time, but we'll see what happens. But so far, in my opinion, and we'll revisit this in a few weeks, I give the slight edge to Philadelphia for now.
I guess we'll see in terms of that, but in my opinion, Miami's still the best team in the Eastern Conference right now.
What does that have to do with this conversation?
I'm just saying, I don't think either of those moves the
I'm
needle in
joking.
terms of making them better
Okay, you're
than.
saying, just to be clear, you're saying Miami, regardless of these
Yeah.
these moves. So
Mhm.
are we forgetting? And I know we'll probably talk about this later. Are you forgetting the reigning champions, Milwaukee Bucks?
Yeah. I'm not
Okay,
forgetting about them. I mean,
okay.
I
I
think
think you are.
I think they're the
I
second
think you're
best.
dismissing them.
No, I think they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference, and there's no
Okay,
question about that.
that is
But I
some
think
Toronto Raptors disrespect. I'm just telling you right now.
um, speaking of disrespect, we're gonna go over to the Portland Trailblazers made a massive trade on the 8th of
Oh, the garage
February,
sale. Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
The garage sale, right? Which it goes with this right here, right?
That's
you
probably
know,
on Dame's phone right now.
for sure, like because at the end of the day, Damon said that if they want to go through a rebuild, he was going to sit out, and basically, you brought in Chauncey Billups to be the coach,
Yeah.
to hopefully keep Dame Lillard there for a time, right? And then now you've traded away his longtime running mate and CJ McCollum, but you basically got back nothing for him. Like, don't get me wrong, Josh Hart is a good piece. Thomas Satoransky can do it. They got a first round pick in 2022, a second round pick in 2026, and another one in 2027. But you gave up a starting shooting guard in CJ McCollum. You gave up Larry Nance, who's got size and can put some points up on the offensive end, right? We saw it when he was with Cleveland. He's going to add depth to a team that's in New Orleans that's already got Brandon Ingram, Jonas Valanciunas, Devontae Graham. Now you're adding CJ into that mix, and hopefully Zion comes back.
Who?
That's a
Oh, that guy. Right. I forgot about him.
And that's what I mean. Like you're adding him to that mix, and that's going to be a tougher. They're going to be a tougher team, right? If they can somehow get back into the playoff picture in terms of getting into the playoff picture instead of a play-in
Yeah.
spot. They're still 11 games under 500. They were only a half game up on the Blazers before the trade was made, right? But then the Blazers received Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but then they flipped Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Juancho Hernan Gomez went as well for Joe Ingles, Elijah
Who's
Hughes, and
injured? Yeah.
Elijah Hughes in a second round draft pick. And as you mentioned, Joe Ingles is out for the entire season, right, with an ACL injury, so he's not coming back. So basically, at the end of the day, the Blazers received Josh Hart, Satoransky, an injured Joe Ingles, Didi Luzada, Elijah Hughes, a first round pick in 2022, and then two second round picks in 26, 27. I mean, you're talking
And
about a
a, and
fire
a
sale.
used and a barely used Drew Brees jersey.
Well, exactly. And then even still, we'll go back there. We'll go back to February 4th when the Clippers loaded up, right, where they traded for Norman Powell and Robert Covington. Those are two huge pieces for the
Yeah.
Blazers, right? Their
Yeah. Yeah.
offensive thing. And they
Yeah.
picked up the Blazers got back Eric Bledsoe, an aging veteran who's been around for a while, Justice Winslow, and Keon Johnson in a second round pick in 2025. And when that trade came out, everybody was like, what the hell are the Blazers doing?
Right.
Like they literally got nothing back for Norman Powell, who,
Right. Who just
obviously
signed a contract last year?
Exactly. He just signed a
right? Or
contract
this
last
year.
year.
Yeah.
And Norman Powell's not a horrible player. He's a great
No.
he's a consistent player when he wants to be. We've seen him with the Raptors for so many years, right? Playoff Norm is a real thing. The Clippers are getting a solid player in Norman Powell, and they're also getting a solid wing in
Right.
Robert
Yeah.
Covington, right? If
Yeah.
Robert Covington can gain some of that offense that he had like a few seasons ago,
All
I think
Star Covington.
yeah, All Star Covington, the Clippers are getting a good piece there. But at the end of the day, you look at the Blazers and it's like, man, what are they actually doing? Like, how are
Well,
they gonna what are they gonna do with what's his name and what is Dame Lillard gonna do? Like, what is
first
he
of all,
gonna do?
the fact that you said what's his name is probably the way the Portland Trailblazers are thinking. Like, what's his name? Is he still here? Because it's obvious to me that the writing's on the wall.
Yeah,
Dame Lillard cannot sit there and say a few weeks ago that he's not going to sit through a rebuild or she's not going to play through a rebuild. This is not a let's reload for this year and then
no,
let's dump shit this year and then we will be back next year. No, you won't. You won't
no,
because it hasn't worked for you for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And we've
yep,
talked about the Portland Trailblazers every year, year in and year out. And this was clearly a complete just gut punch. I don't expect Dame Lillard to be a Portland Trailblazer next year at all. Um, and it's funny, they traded up for Norm Powell. They traded for Norm Powell for Gary Trent.
yeah,
Somehow the Raptors still win this trade because Norm Powell is no longer there and they don't have Gary Trent.
yeah,
They just paid Norm Powell, but again, money moves out and that's fine. And they get all
yeah.
these picks. It's clearly to them, it's the draft capital. That's what they're going
Clearing
for.
cap space. It's clearing cap
Clearing
space.
cap space, right? So either A, they have a really big plan to land something or someone. Uh, B, the funny part is, and we talked about this before we recorded earlier today, the draft class of this upcoming season, hmm,
Yeah,
not
it's
that
not
good.
deep. No,
It's
it's not
not that
deep at
deep.
all.
So
Yeah,
unless you're talking about moving picks for the following year, and it's, as in 24, 25, this to me is tells me that the Portland Trailblazers are in for a few years of pain.
yeah,
And Dame Lillard is actually what is going to catch you, basically the big draft pick. And again, it's sad to see. Now, if I can just go back to the Pelicans for 1 second, because that's how we started this. The Pelicans and the other team that we will talk about in California, the capital of California, are a really confusing bunch because I don't think the Pelicans are close in that bunched up Western Conference. Now, they are right now inside of that bracket,
playing. Yeah,
right? Just to be clear, but they're not close. I
no,
don't know if this is a ploy to say, hey, Zion, while you're chilling out at Burger King, we are trying to build a team. So when you come back ready to play, in like June, when we're out of the playoffs, so you can
yeah,
play pickup ball and then get hurt again. And hopefully he doesn't, by the way. I'm just totally being an asshole about it. We'll be here. I
yeah,
don't know if, again, this is to me, it's one of those teams that is stuck in limbo of we're not really terrible, but we're not really good enough to actually be relevant. So we're going to be stuck in that 7, 6 through 9, 10 spot, and then hope for the best that we can get in because you know why? The other two LA teams stink right now. So that's the only reason why we're actually doing something because the teams that are supposed to be in our spot absolutely stink hot garbage, right?
yeah.
Now the Clippers are
Yep.
ahead of that, and we'll get to that in 1 second. But again, a couple of these teams, and a third one coming soon, uh, questionable. But we'll see. The Pelicans may have me eating my words, but we'll see what happens. You think Zion is doing anything? What's he doing, by the way? Is he in Cancun too, or
I don't know. I really don't know what he's doing. To be honest with you, it's a.
does he know what he's doing?
I hope he comes back because,
We
like I
hope he
said,
comes back. We really do. He's a phenom. He's a phenom. He
yeah,
is what he was, and as advertised, we just have not seen enough of him consistently, right? And what does Jack Armstrong say? Your best ability is your availability.
yeah.
Well, he hasn't been available, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be good to see how it goes in terms of the Pelicans and what they can do with this team and how like the talent they have now. Um, it would be kind of shitty if they made this trade and they still don't make the playoffs. That would be right, but that would be a Pelicans thing to happen, right? A New Orleans
Yeah,
Pelicans thing to happen. Um, you know, we'll move on to, I think, what is probably the most surprising team in the NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Right, they're
Disrespect. We talk about disrespect. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right, literally, like they're fourth in the Eastern Conference, 34-21 on the season. They're 19-11 in their conference, 18-9 at home, 16-12 on the road, 7-3 in their last 10. They've won 3 straight. And they go out and pick up not a game changer, but a guy that's going to be able to go out there and help. Right, you lost at the end of the day. You had Ricky Rubio. He was playing some good basketball, but he was taking the place of Colin Sexton. Right, Colin
Right.
Sexton's out with an injury. Right, so he was taking the place of him, but he's not Colin Sexton. He's not a guy that's going to be able to break a game when you need to. Obviously, he had that
Right.
one
Yeah.
huge game early on in the season there, Ricky
Yeah.
Rubio. But the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to pick up Karis LeVert and a second-round pick in 2022 for Ricky Rubio, a first-round pick in 2022, a second-round pick in 2022, and another one in 2027. Um, that team, I'm starting to like that team. That Cleveland team looking really good, right? You got the guy that should be an all-star, should have been in the conversation of an all-star, Jared Allen, right? He's having an outstanding season.
Solid. Yeah.
Darius Garland's taken a huge step forward. He's looking like an animal out there. Now you're adding Karis LeVert at the guard, at one of the guard spots. So I mean, this team is looking really good. I wanted to get your take on this trade and what you think of the Cleveland Cavaliers picking up Karis LeVert.
If the Cleveland Cavaliers were the New York Knicks, this would be a bigger deal.
Yeah,
The
for
reason that
sure.
it's not a bigger deal is because they're the Cleveland Cavaliers. So all
Yeah,
we know is about Cleveland outside of LeBron James for those two stints is that they have stunk for years.
yeah,
I think this is a solid move for a team that's trying to still learn to win. I think that they have probably, you know, they're probably fighting above their weight class right now. I
yeah.
think so, but that's okay because that's how you learn. They're learning on the fly, right? Sort of like a
Yep.
team around this city that we know. We'll get into that later on, but I think that when you have a team like this and they are playing above their weight class, yeah, an adjustment like this when you add a guy who is sort of like that mid tier sort of guy. Again, you're not adding an elite top three guy in the league, but this is going to only help the Cleveland Cavaliers long term. It's going to, and like you said, right? Ricky Rubio was having a solid year, probably one of his better ones, but he wasn't. He's no Colin Sexton,
No.
right? And then unfortunately, of course, in with Ricky Rubio in the past, he got hurt, right? So this opened the doors for them to make a move and move Ricky Rubio's contract out, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know how far the Cleveland Cavaliers can go. Perhaps depending on where they're seated, 4, 5, 6, and what the matchups are, they can probably sneak in, push a team to a limit, or maybe get a first round, win somewhere in there. Again, still February, still early in the season, but the Cleveland Cavaliers sort of remind me of the Cincinnati Bengals, right? We're in Super Bowl weekend as we record this. Nothing to lose, man. This is a young team that they're just having fun. They've stunk for years. And look, both in Ohio, right?
Yeah.
And they're just going to go out there and do their thing. And whatever happens, happens. They can only get better from this going forward. So I like this trade that has actually gone under the radar because we are talking about all the other big market teams, but like I said to you, if this team was the New York Knicks, this trade would be talked about a little bit more every day. So um, good on them for doing what they're doing. I like their growth. They're probably about a year or two ahead of schedule, right? But hey, a few teams are in the league are a year or two ahead of schedule, and a few teams in the league are 2 years behind, maybe
Yeah.
15. So, and some teams haven't even hit their stride yet. So we'll see what happens.
Speaking of teams that haven't hit their haven't are 15 years behind, the Sacramento Kings. They made a huge move on the 8th of February there, right? They traded for former All-Star Domantas Sabonis,
My
Jeremy
guy,
Lamb, just
my guy.
right? Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday. Well, Jeremy Lamb, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, was traded twice in the same deal.
I didn't even know how you caught that so fast. By the way, that was awesome.
A second round pick in 2027, and the Pacers are going to receive rookie point guard Tyrese Halliburton. But give me one second. Tyrese Halliburton, the rookie, who's having an outstanding season, and it's like thinking of
Do
the
it.
last 21 games he's having.
Bruh.
How do you trade Tyrese Halliburton, the guy you just drafted? I get it. You have De'Aaron Fox, but Tyrese Halliburton. I
Okay.
know you had to give something up to get Domantas Sabonis if you were getting them, and obviously it worked out the other night where where the Kings ended up winning their game, right? But I mean, Tyrese Halliburton is a future point guard in this league, a future all-star point guard in this league with the way he plays the game and how he plays the game. He's a playmaker. He's a guy that can drive to the hoop, put the ball in the basket. He can do a lot out there, right? And then, so basically, you're trading Domantas Sabonis for Tyrese Halliburton. Buddy Hield's going the other way as well, and then you have Tristan Thompson going to the Pacers. I want to get your take on the deal because, I mean, like I said, I like literally, it's just like that's all I have to say. Like, how do you make that? I just don't know how you make that trade if you're the Kings. Like, it's just
Okay.
mind
Okay.
boggling.
Here's the thing with that I am confused about, and if you guys can, anybody listening or watching, just hit me up or hit us up on our socials. By the way, and I actually was, when you saw me lean down, I was actually picking up my calculator just to make sure that the cold one hasn't hit my brain in my calculation. The Sacramento Kings are 15 games under 500, correct?
I
20,
can double check that.
20 21 and 36 is 15 games under 500.
Yep.
Right? 15, 1-5. Not 5 games, not 1 game under 500, not 8 games. 15 games under 500. They've been trashed for ever and ever, for almost 2 decades.
Yep.
They're not close. So unless this is a we will see next year trade, this trade right now for them makes no sense, number one. Number two, you mentioned the big fish, Halliburton, right? Basically, they gave up on a kid a year after they drafted him, right? Not even 2 full seasons for no reason. Why? Basically, you gave the Pacers a free gift.
Yeah.
Halliburton has a lot of upside.
Yep.
Halliburton would not have been moved, as an example, if he was a Masai guy, if he was in LA, if he was in Boston. But the Sacramento Kings, in typical Sacramento fashion, said, you know what? We're just going to go outside the box and be completely idiotic and give up on another young talent. Now, unless there's a bigger plan in play, nobody's going to Sacramento unless you trade for somebody in Sacramento. So for all the people that say Toronto's not a place to play, well, go check out Sacramento, the capital of California. Nobody gives a crap what you're doing. So I don't understand what this Sabonis trade is doing for them. They basically are trying to expedite their growth for next year and the years to come. But they gave up. And again, to me, it's not what they got, it's what they gave up and who they gave up. They gave up on Halliburton. And we were watching the draft last year. And the one thing that we said, when Halliburton got drafted, in that year, the Kings actually got this one right. And the Kings said, you know what? Nah, that's too good for us. Hold our beer. Watch how we screw this up. Now, I can be completely wrong next year, but I don't know where this places the Sacramento Kings going forward, because other than De'Aaron Fox, it's a bunch of mid-card, if you mind me saying that wrestling term, and I'm not disrespecting Sabonis, but I just don't understand what the plan is. But this is Sacramento, and that's what they do. So I'm still confused. That wasn't the only move they did. So, but I just don't know what. Now, we don't need to know, but I don't know what the plan is.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's
like you're speechless. Bruh. Like here, sorry, let me just exactly, bro.
That's all I have to say.
Like this trade is a trade that you make if you're close, right? Like if you were where the Cleveland Cavaliers are, this trade makes sense if you can even hold on to Halliburton. And like the Halliburton part still bothers me more than getting Sabonis, right?
Yeah.
But they're making trades like they're acting like they're 3 games behind a 4 seed or five games behind a 6 seed, or like, no, they're 15 games under 500, dude.
Well, and that's the thing. It's you're talking about 4th seed. They're 2 games out of the 10th.
I'm jacked.
they're 2 games out of the 10th seed, which is the final play-in spot. So it's like they made this deal to make a play-in game. It's like it just doesn't make sense. Like it just doesn't make sense as to why they would make a deal like this, and trade away a key piece of their future, right? I mean, again, like how much longer can the Kings sit there and say, okay, well, we got a bunch of talent, we're going to look to the future, right? You got the Aaron Fox, you have Rishwan Holmes, now you add Domantas Sabonis. It's a talented roster in terms of like what they have,
Right.
but it's not a deep roster. They don't have a deep roster to make a run in the playoffs or to get into the play-in and knock off a
Oh,
top seed and make it a far away, right? You're
yeah.
talking
Good
like I
luck.
said,
You get in, and then you get into the play-in, and then you can make it to the next round. Congratulations. Your present for this is the Phoenix Suns or the
exactly,
Golden
and you
State
just
Warriors.
exactly,
Like it
and
doesn't
you
make
just
sense.
trade
And by
and
the
you
way,
just
they are
traded away.
actually so they might be 2 games behind the 10th seed, but they're only like 3 or 4 games ahead of OKC. So
Yeah,
like let's not kid ourselves here because the math just don't add up.
no, I know it just doesn't. And speaking of, you said that that wasn't the only trade they made. They also traded away Marvin Bagley the third in a four team deal. He went to the Detroit Pistons. Poor Marvin Bagley. Poor Marvin Bagley.
What did he do in a past life to deserve
Right?
this?
Like like literally, what did he do in a past life? Like you said, like he went from the horrible Sacramento Kings to the equally as bad Detroit Pistons, right? Not even
The regulars,
equally.
the Raptor killers, the Detroit Pistons.
Well, like they're 12-43 on the season. Like they're
It's not
absolutely
bad.
atrocious out there,
Yeah,
right? Like
not bad.
right. I don't know. It's just crazy to me. And I
We
mean,
are pissed.
at the end of the day, out of that 4-team trade, I think the Milwaukee Bucks came out ahead in that trade, right? They traded away Dante DiVincenzo. Um, he went that way.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think of who else went there, but the Bucks ended up with a solid bench piece in Serge Ibaka. He's won an NBA championship. He's been to the finals. He's done all that. He's going back to the Eastern Conference. They
yeah.
picked up 2
This
future
is this
second
is a,
round
this is
picks
a smart basketball move from Milwaukee.
for a team. Yeah, like for a team that
Yeah,
just came off winning a thing. They're
yeah.
one game back of the Miami Heat for the first in the Eastern Conference. They're looking at going back to back in the NBA for an NBA
Not
championship. So
according
this
to you.
no, hey, I never said that. I said they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference. I still think the
No
Heat are a better
respect.
team. No, I think the Heat are a better team this year. I just think
Right
that the Heat are
now.
better defensively. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Miami Heat are. I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks are going to
Right.
get knocked out in the first round,
Right.
but I don't. I still like the Miami Heat more than I like the Milwaukee Bucks.
But in saying that to tie up those 2 teams, this is the kind of trade that you're looking ahead to your matchups if you play at Miami, if you play a whatever that fuck Brooklyn becomes later on, or even Philadelphia, right?
Yeah,
Look at the
yeah,
guy who they got, Serge Ibaka, and the depth that they have, right? They have
yeah,
a bunch of guys that can, you know what, when it comes down to that 3 minutes or 4 minutes of that basketball game, and you need to make stops, they have
yeah,
guys that have the capability and the ability to do that, right?
yeah.
So to me, the Bucks are looking at the bigger picture, and I don't even think, and all jokes aside, to your point, that the Bucks need to finish first or need to
No,
finish second or whatnot. The Bucks are going to get in and do their damage wherever they feel like placing, being seated. And I think that again, you have your choice. By the way, I think I picked Miami as I think I picked Miami or maybe Brooklyn. Who cares? Doesn't matter. And we'll have to go back and rewind it and delete it. But the teams that are best set up right now, and I'll give you credit on this, are the teams that we just talked about, the
yeah,
Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat, because of their depth. And
yeah,
and in the article we were reading today is the interior defense that the Milwaukee, they're a big team now, or bigger, that they've secured right now. And we all know with the pedigree of a Pat Riley built team and how Eric Spoelstra plays those guys. They have Kyle Lowry. They have a bunch of dogs there. Like, can you imagine Miami, Milwaukee in a 7-game series? Like it's like a Hell in a Cell match, right? So
yeah.
we will see, because the Eastern Conference is in flux right now. In my opinion, right? There's a lot of teams that need to adjust and adjust quickly. Well, maybe not that quick, but there's a lot of moving parts. So, but again, nobody cares about the Pistons. And again, you know what? Poor Bagley. I really actually do feel bad for him. Like he went from trash to like,
Trash.
a bag of diapers,
Yeah. Oh my God.
used diapers.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know, man. I feel bad for the guy. Like you said, what has the guy done to deserve this?
I don't know, but I don't know.
We'll move on to another trade here. We'll move on to the Toronto Raptors here. It's a minor trade, not a huge trade. But
I just realized I'm wearing my TFC shirt, by the way.
hey,
This is what happens when you get dressed in the dark.
the the Toronto Raptors, they won again tonight. I believe that's what, 8 straight now that they've won.
They're on an 8
Right?
game streak.
They're
Yeah,
they're
right.
they're on it. They're on an 8 game.
That's a heater. That's right.
Right, 8 game winning streak. They're 31-23, and I think I said a couple weeks ago, 10 games above 500 in the fifth or sixth. In the fifth or sixth seed. Nobody remembers that, right? But fifth or sixth seed. Right now, they're sitting in the 6th seed. They're 4.5 game back of the conference lead. They're playing some of the best basketball that I've seen played in a while. Gary Trent, like his father says, seems to be loving it in here, and we'll talk about that as well a little bit later, just before we end the podcast. But another game tonight, he had 42 points tonight. He was outstanding again for the thing. But the Toronto Raptors made a trade. They traded away a guy who really hasn't played for them all season.
Your boy,
right? Our boy, the Dragon.
Not our boy, your boy.
My boy, whatever. Goran Dragic, the Dragon. He is going to the San Antonio Spurs, along with a protected first-round draft pick for Thaddeus Young, Drew Eubanks, who the Raptors have waived, and a second-round pick in 2022. I mean, for the Raptors side of it, I mean, I like the trade because they're getting some length in Thad Young. He's a guy that can put up points offensively. We saw a little bit of a resurgence last year with the Bulls for Thad Young. Right,
he was a Raptors killer, by the way. So if you can't beat him, get him.
Right, exactly. And then they're trading away a guy, like I said, that hasn't really contributed to the team. Goran Dragic,
and nobody off their actual roster that is playing.
Exactly. And it didn't cost them anything, right? Like, obviously there was the talk that earlier on in the day that there was that 3-team trade where the Raptors were possibly going to get Nerlens Noel and THT from the Lakers with Dragic being involved. But it's like, it just it didn't make sense. And Bobby Webster basically said it the other day. It doesn't really make sense because the Raptors are playing some of the best basketball they've played all season. Right? They're like we just said, 8 games. They've won 8 games straight. They're
and they're not just beating doormats.
No,
you know what I mean.
Well,
like other than tonight, that was a pickup game tonight, like by that score. But they're beating. They've been either beating or competing right in there with really good teams, right?
Yeah.
Over the last few weeks. So I think that what happened with the Raptors is in the beginning of the year. And sorry to cut you off. I think that we all had this idea of, well, the Raptors is obviously need a center. The Raptors obviously they need a backup point guard, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you can get something for Gary Trent or Boucher. And I even question, is Siakam ever going to come back? Remember, after there was that stretch of games that he was basically ice cold. And it was basically, okay, is Siakam going to ever pick it up? Can we get something from him? Then I believe he went on the COVID protocol. And ever since coming back, my guy has been on a heater, man. Like he has been all-star Pascal Siakam to the point that his numbers are actually statistically across the board, other than points per game by a 1.5, are actually significantly better than the year that he was an all-star. Gary Trent, I think, is the X factor that changed really the course of this team, because I don't know that anybody knew that Gary Trent would be this good this quickly. We know what he can do on defense. But now that you have Gary Trent on that starting 5 with Van Vliet and Pascal and obviously OG, who was also under protocol and he was also hurt for a bit. And of course, the rookie, right? Scotty doesn't know Barnes. This team basically has just said, okay, we're going to do this with what we have. And they forced the hand of the management team to say, okay, what we thought we needed is actually right in front of us. So now what we need to do is help these guys grow. And I don't think, I think I read somewhere today, and it was a very good point that I think the Raptors are comfortable and not necessarily having this true elite start center, right? This is actually a Nick Nurse team that can just use guys in a flexible sort of option and play Pascal at the five because he can defend really any position, and then bring Ken Birch when he gets back up to speed. And if Achua can consistently get going, this team has a lot of options. So they just needed a little bit of depth. I like this trade. Again, like you said, and like I said as well, no real blood off their hands from the actual roster. And there's still the buyout market because now what they've done is they got under that tax threshold. So they're still not really done. I don't think so. I think that if they can add another shooter in the buyout market,
Yeah.
I think they'll be okay. So I really like this deal based on how this team is constructed right now.
Yeah, and I mean, I got to give a shout out to Pascal Siakam because there's been so much hate on him, and he's come back outstandingly. Right, he's playing some of the best basketball that I've seen him play in 2 years, and he's playing up to that number one potential in that contract that he's had. Right, and he's given another scoring option other than just Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent, and that's another thing we're seeing. Right, we're seeing sort of scoring by committee, right? You've got Scotty Barnes, Freddie VanVleet puts up a lot of points, going to his first All-Star games.
Yeah.
Now you've got Gary Trent that's putting up points.
Oof.
Pascal Siakam's putting up points, right? They're playing some really good basketball, and they're getting scoring from a lot of different things. But there's one thing I want to say just before we even get into any further of it. What's the hate with Malachi Flynn for the Toronto Raptors fan base? Like, I don't understand it. Like today, he was trending on Twitter because people were like, "Oh my god, we still have Malachi Flynn," and I was like, "What has the guy done that's been so horrible that like they want him
Well,
gone?" Like he's
I think what happened is, and especially in this city, is Malachi Flynn had a really good first, year, whatever, in that bubble, right? And we all thought, and people thought, okay, Malachi Flynn was going to be, the Red Van Vliet, right? They were calling him Red Van Vliet. Remember that?
yeah, yeah,
And then his play has to, tapered off, and he's falling off a little bit. And let's call it what it is. Nick Nurse doesn't trust him right now,
yeah,
right? So based on all of that stuff, basically he's there's always two targets in every Toronto team in this city. It just happens. Like you can go to Jays, the Leafs, et cetera, et cetera. It just happens. So we went from trying to trade Pascal Siakam to basically let's pick on Malachi Flynn. Now I don't
yeah,
understand how you pick on a guy who doesn't even play. So to me, this whole hate is irrelevant. You can't hate on a guy you don't see, right? It's like we're treating him like he's Dragic, right?
yeah, yeah,
I think there's still time to develop, and what I do know is this: no matter what Malachi Flynn is doing, I think that you need to be patient because if there's anybody who develops players and are patient with players development, is this franchise, is this organization, right? So if Malachi Flynn is not getting minutes, like if you're expecting Malachi Flynn to come off the bench and score 40, then you haven't been paying attention. It doesn't just work
no,
that way. And
no,
let's face it, Nick Nurse is going to play his guys heavy minutes, right?
yeah,
Now that might change with Young coming in and sort of the bench taking place and depending what happens in the buyout market. But
yeah,
I think that if we are worried about Malachi Flynn,
mm-hmm.
really, like, relax. Like, who cares? Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude to Malachi, but who the
No, I
hell
know.
cares? Like,
No, I
relax.
agree
Let's not
with you.
pick on
It's just
Red Van Vliet.
um we'll go through a few more trades. There was a lot of trades. Some of them were a little bit more minor trades, but another big trade happened between Dallas and the Washington Wizards.
Good.
We had Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans going to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for Kristaps Porzingis and a second round pick in 2022. But boy, oh boy, did the Knicks win that trade.
What?
Right? Like I'm talking about the Knicks trading Kristaps Porzingis to Dallas, right? And he never was able to stay healthy. He was never
Well,
able,
yeah, but
right?
the
And
Knicks
then,
still suck, right? So,
well,
I mean,
yeah, of
from a trade
course, but
standpoint, yeah, but the franchise hasn't they're actually taking a step back this year. So who gives
yeah,
a
well,
shit,
of course,
right? Um, Porzingis, to your point though, his nickname is the Unicorn. I think he should be called the Unifraud because I don't know what the hell this guy is. The talent is there,
yeah,
but he is basically the ghetto version of Anthony Davis, right? When he's hurt, when he's healthy, he's good, but he's hurt more than he's healthy. right? At least Anthony Davis has a little bit of more credibility to back it up. But Porzingis is a flake. That whole dynamic with him and Luka Doncic was a
Yeah,
disaster waiting to happen,
yeah,
and it has. So yay, he had 2 good weeks in Dallas in 3 years. So what, right? So let's send our trash to the U.S. Capitol to add to more of their trash because they don't. They're another team that don't know what the hell they're doing.
no,
Bradley Beal is probably going to get traded in the offseason anyway. They're going
yeah,
to do something there. And there's another team that's just going to say, whatever, we'll just be trash for another 3 years because nobody gives a crap anyway. Right. So the Porzingis trade, to me, to all seriousness, is a slight win for Dallas. I'm not even comparing what I'm not saying what Washington got is bad or good or whatever, but I'm talking about what Dallas needs to do going forward. This is going to be good for them to get rid of Kristaps Porzingis. He's just taking up space. He's not a game changer. He doesn't move the needle. He's just a big guy who just collects money, which is great,
yeah,
right? He's basically the opposite of, what's his name, the Joker, right? So at least the Joker is a big guy who actually earns his money and actually competes for the MVP trophy every year,
yeah, yep.
right? Porzingis is basically the opposite of that. But Dallas, I don't think they're done. I think just staying on the Dallas thing, I think that you know, Dragic going to San Antonio is a stopover. He's going to stay in Texas, and I think he ends up being a Dallas Maverick.
Yeah.
Connect with his buddy there. But yeah, good on Dallas for recognizing we need to move on from this now before he becomes a rotten banana.
But it's also funny because I mean Dallas is Jalen Brunson's having an outstanding season, right?
Yeah,
He's due for a big raise
yeah,
in the
yep,
offseason too, right? So you add in Spencer Dinwiddie onto that team, and it kind of gives cover for if Jalen Brunson goes into the market and he wants 17, 18, 19, $20 million a season, and the Mavericks aren't willing to pay him, you have a guy that's capable of playing the point guard position or playing the guard position,
right,
um,
yep.
and can fill in there, right? You obviously, you mentioned it, they're probably going to go out and get Goran Dragic and bring him in as well. That adds another guard to their team. So the Mavericks are sort of kind of going all in, but not going all in, I guess. They're 32 and 23 on the season, 12 and a
Again,
half
one
back.
of those teams that is they're okay.
Yeah,
They're okay,
they're so, right?
right? But a team with Luca, and you know this with the NBA, you need another stud
Yeah,
with him. If you're
yeah,
going to compete with your Phoenix, you're going to compete with, with your Golden State Warriors, whatever the hell Utah Jazz decides to be one week or another, you need a 1-2, maybe a three punch. Not the Lakers nonsense that they have going on, which we're not going to talk about, hopefully, or maybe we are. But Luca needs a legit dude to help him carry that load because yes, he can probably do it for a round and a half, but other than Luca, there's a significant drop off.
yeah,
Like, and I'm talking about star power, and the NBA is built
absolutely.
on outside of Toronto apparently and Milwaukee, the NBA is built on star power teams, and for the most part, it works. We've seen it fail, flop, sort of in Brooklyn. The LA thing is a complete just hot garbage right now, considering that I picked them to go to the finals. But I think Luca needs help, more help than what he's gotten.
Yeah, yeah. And that Russell Wilson trades, Russell Wilson, oh, Jesus, I'm talking thinking of football here. Russell Westbrook
Well,
trade,
he might
and
get
then,
traded too. Who doesn't matter.
well, but I mean, it's not really working out for either team, right? Russell Westbrook's not doing well in LA, and there's a lot of talk about him and him not gelling with the roster. And then on the opposite end of it, obviously the Washington Wizards shipped out Montrezl Harrell, who was
Yeah,
part of that deal. Uh, I don't remember if Spencer Dinwiddie was part of it. I can't remember if it was a 3-team deal or not. I don't know how, but Montrezl Harrell's now gone to the Charlotte Hornets. There's talk that he could be bought out because he doesn't want to play in Charlotte. There's lots
really.
of rumors. Yeah,
Michael Jordan will send him to Mars. That's fine.
there's lots. I mean, I'll take Montrezl Harrell in Toronto if they get bought out, if he gets bought out, right? But
Mm,
I mean, you don't really need him, but I mean, it's an extra defensive guy. It's another guy coming off the bench, another guy with length and can play some defense, right? But if he at the end of the day, Montrez is probably going to go out west if he does become in the buyout market, and
Lakers.
exactly right.
Just joking. Because that
Well, but
worked well.
but I mean, go somewhere. That's where you'll be going. You'll be going somewhere out west, in my opinion.
Yep.
But yeah, like the Washington Wizards are in the same boat as
Kings.
as the Kings and the Blazers. Just
Kings,
kind of
Blazers, Wizards,
yeah,
Pelicans, right there. All teams that are pretend good, they're absolute trash.
yeah. Like
Okay, maybe the Pelicans are decent, like I said, but they're not. They're not there yet. The Kings trash. Washington trash
yeah,
for sure. We need
but
a trash bag. We need like a trash can sound, by the way, for next
I'll get
podcast.
that. I will get that for next podcast,
Yeah,
right?
trash.
I will.
There you
I'll
go,
get
brah.
that for next.
Brah.
But no, like it's just I don't know that seeing the trades that were made, and you look at the standings, you look at the Eastern Conference, and I mean, we've saw for so many years that Western Conference was so hard to get into the playoffs, and right now the 8th seed is 2 games below 500 in the Los Angeles Clippers, and then you look at the Eastern Conference, and it's the complete opposite way around, right?
Yeah.
All the way up until the 9th seed, it's 500.
Yeah.
Right, 500 basketball. So it looks like it's gone the other way. The Milwaukee Bucks got better. The Cleveland Cavaliers got better. The 76ers got definitely better. The Raptors added a few pieces. I mean, but again, the Raptors are kind of playing with house money at the end of the day, right? Nobody really expected them to be where they are,
Yeah.
but everybody's happy to see that they're there
Of
because they're
course.
playing good. They're playing good basketball, right?
Right.
The Celtics got a little better. They brought back Daniel Tice. They made a couple other moves. The Brooklyn Nets obviously made a huge deal where they brought it with Ben Simmons and bringing in a few others guys. The Hornets picked up Montrez. So I mean, the Hawks. I was surprised they stood pat, didn't really make a move. The Knicks, same thing, didn't really make a move as well.
Knicks are dumb.
Right, but that's what I
The
mean, right?
Knicks
This
talk big game. This was their chance to do something, and they didn't do it. So basically,
right,
they're okay with being trash. They're going to go out
exactly.
in the buyout market. I'm sure that there'll be something available, but it's like going to the recycling bin. It's like, yeah, this is barely used shoes. I'll take those.
Yeah,
But we'll see what's available. But I think the Knicks are sort of in that state of flux where they're not really good enough right now to make a big push,
yeah,
right? But they're not bad enough. Like they're not really good, but they're not that trashy enough to say, okay, we're just gonna start selling parts, right?
yeah,
You also have to play the market, right? So they're basically hoping that they can get on a heater here because listen, they're going to run out of spots in the Eastern Conference, whether it's a play-in or not,
yeah,
uh, to get in. Because
yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be a regression by Cleveland. I don't know if there's going to be a regression by the Raptors. Like everybody's going to go through their slumps and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But time's ticking. And yes, I know it's only February, but time is ticking, New York. How you
Yeah.
doing? Bing bong. Bing bong, bitches.
Wait. Oh my god, I wasn't expecting that to come from you. I wasn't
Yeah,
expecting that to come
same.
from you. All we need is the guy to say Byron,
Bye.
Joe Byron, right? Right. That's all we need right now. After that, but to end it off before we end off the podcast, obviously it was a trade deadline special, but I know you wanted to talk about Gary Trent Sr.'s comment the other day
Yeah.
about his son. So I'll leave that to you to discuss and to let us know your thoughts on
Yeah.
those comments.
And it won't be too long, but I just wanted to just touch on because we're here to have fun and talk basketball. We're not professionals, etc. But Gary Trent's dad, and I'm just paraphrasing, just basically said a week ago or so that Gary was not having excuse me fun in Portland, and he went through a time of depression. And ever since he's got to Toronto, he's having fun. He's playing basketball. He's basically doing what he loves to do. And that brought me to sort of a thing about mental health and whatnot, because at the end of the day, yes, we always attach a dollar sign to these athletes and actors and whatnot, but just like any one of us, they are human beings and they have things, shit that goes through, whether it's family or otherwise. And depression and mental health and all that is a real thing. And I'll be very candid with you. We had just a discussion the other day at work, and most of you know that we work together, and we talked about mental health. And it's something that not everybody is comfortable in talking about. Um, I'm not here to give a seminar or whatever the case is, but I applaud, either parents or athletes that come out and are raw and speak up about this, because everybody is going through it. So if you know somebody, reach out. If you know of somebody, just check in. Sometimes it's just a matter of just checking in and see how they're doing. And, because everybody goes through shit. And the Gary Trent story, although I haven't heard from him yet, reminds us all that everybody has something that they're going through. And
Yeah.
it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much you make, right? Forget that. That's the bonus thing. You've earned that. But even the elite have shit that goes through. So before we start judging people for how they act and how they talk, just think about what, potentially is going on behind the scenes. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that we saw that. I'm glad that, people are starting to again speak up, and especially in the sports world, we saw that a couple of years ago with DeMar and Kevin Love and all that good stuff. But, I think it was just refreshing to continue to hear that. And, it's also, good for these, whether it's a parent or an athlete, to use their platform to talk about that, because there's people that are struggling out there.
Yeah. No, exactly. And mental health is obviously, it's a hot topic in terms of like a lot of people are feeling it with COVID and being
Yeah, absolutely.
stuck in houses and all this other all these other things that are going on. So obviously, if you are feeling depressed, or you're having anxiety, or you have any sort of mental health issues or whatever, it's always you talk to somebody. Never just keep it bottled in and just try and deal with it yourself, because it's not the best way to deal with it sometimes, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's right. So but it's always great to talk about it, and everybody needs to do it more often, right? And you need to have
Absolutely.
more and more people talking about it, and hopefully that trend continues on into the future.
Absolutely. Well said.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast.